Tell me a story.
Welcome to the Lights, Camera, Action Entertainment Reviews Podcast.
You know how sometimes things line up?
I haven't seen you before, have I?
Took me 20 years to find you. It is simply extraordinary.
You're magic. Like me.
I don't know about magic.
On this episode, we will be discussing our favorites and disappointments of 2019.
You have something very rare. Beyond anything anyone has ever felt before.
I came looking for answers.
I don't have the answers. But I know we end up where we're meant to be.
Some people believe if we repeat stories often enough, they make us who we are.
Do you consider yourself a hero?
Put some clothes on. Let's go for a ride.
To read more of our reviews and listen to our podcasts, go to lcamoviereviews.com.
Everything you see exists together in a delicate balance.
The universe has a way of leading you to where you're supposed to be at the moment you're supposed to be there.
I'm scared. It's all right. You're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay. You're made of everything you do.
Ready? Sure.
This episode will contain spoilers. Listener discretion is advised.
There's magic that brought us together. And that magic is called hope.
There's only one way this ends. Last man standing.
And so it begins.
Thank you for this journey, no matter how it ends.
We hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy during this coronavirus pandemic. And now, here are your hosts for this episode, Mike Winkler and Alistair Englehart. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lights, Camera, Action Entertainment Reviews podcast. Mike Winkler here, along with Alistair Englehart again. Glad to have you back, Alistair.
Yep, thanks for having me, Mike.
I want to have a shout out to everybody, hoping they're staying safe and healthy with the coronavirus outbreak. I know this hasn't been easy on anybody with what's going on right now, and Alistair and I are doing this over Skype to give you some entertainment, from what we can from home. And I hope everybody's staying safe, and shout out to all the nurses and the military and everybody else helping everybody out. We really greatly appreciate it. We hope to get back to reality soon.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Alistair and I decided today what we're going to do is we're going to go over a kind of a worst and favorites of 2019 and what we're looking forward to kind of in 2020. But Alistair, explain to the audience what your idea is and how we're going to do this structure tonight.
Sure, yeah, Mike. So given the fact that the vast majority of my exposure to movies over the past year have been related to Chuggington, Thomas the Tank Engine, with having two young ones, I figured that the best help I could be would be kind of providing recaps of some of the critics' reviews, so more of a voice of the people for each of these movies, and giving some snippets from a couple reviews from each movie, and then allowing Mike the opportunity to kind of contribute from his expert perspective, given his background in film, in responding to those snippets, and then supplementing it with some thoughts of his own.
Excellent. Sounds like a great plan. It sounds like it's going to be fun.
I think it's going to be fun.
All right, we'll start with one of my favorites from January of 2019, and that was Escape Room.
Yeah, so Escape Room actually fell right in the middle for a lot of people. So IMDb had it rated at a 6.3, Rotten Tomatoes at a 51%, and then the Metacritic 48%. And even these two reviews that I found were a little bit spread out in terms of how they responded. So the source one that I found is from the website Plugged In. And they mentioned that some film critics have referenced survival horror picks like Saw and the Final Destination series when talking about Escape Room, and without a doubt, viewers would sense the cinematic zeitgeist of both of those film franchises in this movie's mix. But the differences with Escape Room that they mentioned is that the grisly horror aspects of those other franchises have been mostly, from their perspective, snipped out of this PG-13 pick. We don't just sit there wincingly fearful of how the next victim will be butchered or pureed, as much as we wonder what clue might be right in front of the characters as situations crumble and the clock kicks down. And in fact, by cutting back on the blood and by leaving the truly nasty bits out altogether, Adam Robital, am I pronouncing his last name correctly?
So. The director? Yeah.
Yeah, Adam Robital, he's created more of an adrenalized thriller than a pure horror flick. And the film plot is equally driven by these likable characters who are paired with some dominating quote-unquote characters of another sort, the puzzle-filled escape room sets themselves. And those rooms really one and all keep the action flowing and the tension of the film palpable. All of that said, however, and again, this is Plugged In's perspective, they didn't think that Escape Room deserved a hearty thumbs up, but there are some positives in the form of brave personal sacrifices and the puzzle solving, but audiences they thought had plenty of negatives to navigate too. That the film's obscenity laden dialogue isn't something you definitely can't puzzle your way out of. It felt a little bit too much at points, not necessarily tastefully inserted. The foul death dealing evil behind everything that happens there it doesn't really have any thought provoking lessons to teach. They thought no real morality tale takeaway. It's simply evil for the gleeful sake of being evil. So I think they were looking for something, a plot line that was a bit more substantial, and that it felt a bit surface level at points. So they felt like just a bit more focus on the virtue of the characters against this evil around them might have been a neat highlight by the time the final clues were gathered and the last lock was sprung. So that was Plugged In's perspective. We also had a perspective from the Hollywood Reporter. So they said that entertainment fads don't tend to inspire the best movies, and so we've all kind of seen these escape rooms popping up around us. I noticed a couple even here in Cleveland that since coming back were new to me that weren't here when I first lived in the area several years ago. But they said those who've jumped on the escape room trend have really lucked out with Robital's Escape Room. This little thriller was surely more fun than most of the riddle solving lock-ins currently springing up around the country.
That's true.
They thought it was conspicuously short on gore. It's geared towards those who prefer the thrill of impending death to seeing the actual event, which is a bit more what we see in Saw and Final Destination, though. Even though its final beats have a bit more of a familiar flavor in that regard, with the oven turning on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is one time a fright flick's inevitable promise to return doesn't really inspire groans. Like it doesn't kind of necessarily flow the way we might expect it to, with a bit more of a drawn out story in that regard. So their kind of their closing thoughts on it were, despite the early threat of being similar to Saw, Escape Room is less sadistic than it is relentless, in their words. They said it was pausing only really once to catch its breath and to let the heroes start to share some of their secrets to make sense of things and their backgrounds. And while its scares aren't as clever as, say, the best moments in the Final Destination series, Robital definitely brings some visual wit to the most memorable sequence, which they felt was the topsy-turvy challenge, where the camera plays with their disorientation, even as the actors were finding their footing. And that centerpiece also, they felt, offered more persuasive heroism, kind of in contrast to Plugged In's perspective. They felt like there was some more persuasive moments in terms of the heroism of the characters than it's usually found in flicks like this. So they're hoping for a sequel, that the box office receipts would justify.
One is greenlit.
Yeah, right. And more thrills like it. So, yeah. So some mixed thoughts there. What are yours, Mike?
Well, when I saw the movie, I remember seeing the trailers, and they kind of surprised me because it looked interesting, but there were similarities to Saw and other movies, and I thought, is it traveling into the same territory of things we've already seen before? And but I thought, you know what? Let me give this movie a shot. Some parts of it look interesting. The movie looks shot very well. Let's see what the story is. So I went and saw it one night, and I was genuinely surprised how much I really enjoyed it. Because how innovative the set design was for the escape rooms, and how cool, like for instance, like the oven you were talking about. They're like in this room where it looks like a waiting room. They think they're going into a normal escape room like we experience here. And the room starts to heat up. They start seeing things around the room that are weird and out of place. And they have to get out of this room in a vent before the room explodes into like this big type of oven kind of thing.
Jeez.
And that leads to one room after the other. There's a room where they're outside of a cabin in the winter and they're about to freeze to death. There's another one where they're in that topsy-turvy room, which is really cool design, with a pool table that's upside down, and they have to navigate the room before the room falls apart below them into this long elevator shaft they can fall into.
Huh.
So it's really cool. There's things like that. And I thought the character development was pretty good, especially the lead character of Zoe. You can tell she's kind of shy and whatnot in the beginning, and you start learning why, especially when you start seeing all the backgrounds. There's a stock boy named Ben, there's a truck driver, there's an Iraq war veteran, and an escape room enthusiast, and they all have backgrounds that somehow intersect with each other and make sense why they were all picked out specifically for this room.
Yeah, that's neat.
So I thought the writing was pretty good. The ending of the movie does leave you with a cliffhanger. And at the time, I was like, is the movie ending this way because it's your typical horror ending, or because they're wanting to continue this as a franchise? Well, come to find out a day or two later after I saw the movie, an article came out saying they want to make a sequel if the movie was successful. Well, it was actually successful, and now a sequel's coming out December 30th of this year.
Oh, wow. That early. Jeez. Have they announced the title?
As of right now, it's just known as Escape Room 2.
Okay.
There's mostly a new cast intact, but from what I understand, a few of the surviving members of the first film will still be in it to a degree. I'm hoping they'll film, but I don't know to the extent yet. So that'll be interesting.
Kind of like the implication being that at the very end there that they did make it, at least part of their group made it out.
Right.
Huh. Cool. Yeah.
So overall, yes, I agree with some of the reviews on how they describe some things, but the movie kind of was fun. It wasn't gory. It didn't feel the need to be like Saw and have blood and guts flying everywhere all the time. It relied itself on the creativity and the design of the set pieces and making the tense and thrills around what was going to happen in the room.
Yeah, and a couple of the other reviews that I had noticed definitely had pointed out that you really when you go to movies like these, you have to realize the context of what you're going to. That if you're going to something where you're expecting this in-depth plot, that you're kind of setting yourself up for disappointment. The entertainment value of these types of films is a bit other than that, in things like you mentioned, like getting to see neat cinematography, and to just get excited generally and to be experiencing that thrill. So yeah, well, I'm glad you liked it, Mike. That's cool.
Yeah, very, very much so. I really enjoyed it. One of the second movie that I really enjoyed from this year was actually did you hear the movie The Upside with Kevin Hart?
I didn't. Let me bring it up though.
Sure.
Okay. The Upside. This was I'm trying to pull it up right now. Kevin Hart.
Yeah, Kevin Hart and Bryan Cranston and Nicole Kidman star in this movie. It's actually based on a true story.
Okay. Yeah. Mike, hopefully you can snip this audio out, but the Google's saying it's a 2017 film, Is it? Am I looking at the right one?
Yes, the movie actually was filmed and actually was released at the Toronto Film Festival in 2017, but was not released in theaters till January 11th of 2019.
Oh, neat. Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's a neat bit of history. Yeah, it looks like IMDb definitely rated this one a little bit higher than our last film at almost a 7. With again kind of some diversity in the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic with Rotten Tomatoes being a 41%. And then Metacritic at a 46. But again, right below that, it does 90% like this movie. You know, it's so hard to interpret sometimes the various reviews to kind of know what to expect. But
right,
what's a general synopsis of this film, Mike?
So basically, the film follows a paralyzed billionaire, and he got this disease that required him, or he was paralyzed from the waist down. All he could do was move his head. So Kevin Hart is a recently paroled convict, and he's looking for a job. And in order to, he has a son and an ex-wife, and he has to get a job in order to continue to get different things. So he goes to this place, and Bryan Cranston's character ends up hiring him because he wants to take a chance on him because he realizes he's somebody that probably wouldn't be right for the job, but he seems like he's right for the job in the sense of who he is and he needs a second chance. So the movie basically shows their unlikely friendship and how he learns to take care of him and how they really become really great friends.
Sounds like a really inspirational film. Yeah. I'm looking at some of the thoughts, particularly on IMDb, where it got some pretty good reviews. So the people saying this was actually a remake. It looks like. Is that true, Mike?
Remake
Mike,
of. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yes,
yeah.
It is the third. It is a third remake of a movie that was made. There was another film that was more of an Asian flick, I believe, and then it was remade again in 2016. It was an Argentinian film, and then the U.S. made it in 2017 for 2019.
Okay, cool. Yes, this person, one of the reviews that I'm reading right now on IMDb, that they point out that it's a remake. You know, face it, remakes get done, and they'll continue to get done. So if you go into this one with an open mind, just willing to have some fun and enjoy a good story, you'd end up saying the same. So they really encourage people to ignore the negative reviews, which there seem to be some of those posted on some other sites of Roger. Forgive me, Mike.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. That's plenty okay.
Roger. What is this site called, Mike? Roger.
Which one?
Ebert.
Yeah.
Ebert. Yeah. So Roger Ebert, is an example of one that had some negative things to say. But they said ignore the negative reviews, purposely trying to bash the film, and go see it for yourself. It's not they said it's not the best movie in the world, but it's definitely a movie that would leave you smiling in the end. Again, kind of that inspirational feeling. And they felt Kevin Hart really held his own in the movie to the point where they're hoping he'll consider doing more movies like this in the future, since he showed such a good range for being a comedian.
Yeah, it was surprising. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen his comedy, but they definitely felt like he did a good job. The matchup with Bryan Cranston and Nicole Kidman also seemed to have been a highlight. So I thought that was a pretty brilliant matching, and it definitely made a good family film.
In a way,
so
that
was. So another person that actually gave it 10 out of 10 stars was actually themselves a quadriplegic and resonated with the film in that way. They said they're really thankful for Kevin Hart, Bryan Cranston, the whole crew, and the rest of those involved in the remake. That movies entertain us, but they're even better when they can educate, entertain, and make us laugh at the same time. And they point out there haven't really been any movies with big celebrity actors showing that a quadriplegic can actually live a regular life and have happiness. And that they felt like this movie came out, and that They mentioned a couple of movies that had come out recently. One of which I actually saw with my wife, and I'm forgetting the name of it, but it had the actress who played in Game of Thrones, the Queen.
Oh, we're talking about Amelia Clarke. Oh, that's Last Christmas.
Okay, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But they mentioned that a couple other big movies came out recently that the quadriplegic chose suicide at the end, and instead of being looked at like a regular person, they were looked at with pity. So they really appreciated the perspective that this movie had. It's not easy being completely dependent on others for everything, but that this movie really portrayed that life can still be very happy and satisfying. Which, again, resonated with them specifically, and I'm sure resonated with a lot of other people too.
Yeah, it ended up being a pretty heartfelt movie. I know I remember seeing the trailer for this quite a bit in the theater with other movies, and it really garnered my interest right away because I kind of like these inspirational films because they always leave you somewhat coming out of a theater happy. And sometimes we need that because we live in a society today where, a lot of things, don't make people happy. Look at what's going on right now. I mean, This is the kind of movie right now where we need something like this with what's going on right now. And but I thought the movie was really great. This actually is really one of my favorites of last year. I find myself watching it every now and then on video, and the performances are excellent. The movie's humorous. It's kind of touching in a way, and the movie really has an ending that's really hopeful, and it's not a depressing ending. It's really hopeful, and that I think is part of the reason why I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So Mike, just to recap, because you said it earlier when we were talking, when I first found the film, it was mentioned that it was a 2017 movie. You said it was part of a festival in 2017, and then it was released in the U.S. in 2019.
Oh yeah, 2017. You said, yeah, it was 2017 because of it premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival in 2017. I'm not really necessarily sure why it was held up for release for so long.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was having a hard time finding a distributor or whatnot, but yeah, it was quite a bit of time between the time it premiered there and when it premiered in theaters.
Yeah, I'm glad it came to us eventually.
Yeah.
Is that a common trajectory for films where they'll start at festivals first?
Some do. There is a good amount that do, and they do take a while to get released in theaters to the general public. But for like a lot of the big budget movies, not so much. Sometimes they'll premiere it like Sundance or the Cannes Film Festival, but usually it just depends on the kind of movie it is.
Sure. Neat.
So I want to get your thoughts on this because I already did a podcast with Jason Kabasic on the Avengers on Endgame, and of course that's definitely at the top of last year's list. So, what were your thoughts on Endgame as a whole?
On Endgame, oh gosh, I mean, I definitely loved it. I saw it a couple times. Actually, so once in theater, and then as soon as it came out in film, I watched it again just to try to catch what I missed. Yeah, I'm trying to think back to my impressions when I first watched it. I thought the acting was fantastic. I loved actually the most touching scene for me in the film was actually that last scene with Captain America when he passed on his shield and passed the mantle. I thought that was really neat, and his character, I think, all throughout phase 3 of the Marvel movies has just been a really inspiring leader and remains, I think, my favorite hero in the entire franchise. So I really enjoyed the battle that they had with Thanos at the end. I thought that there was a lot of really neat action there, and I was thankful that it wasn't quite as simple as some uber hero like Captain Marvel coming through and just punching everyone out and it was over. They really drew it out nicely, and I remember the first time I saw it, I'd purposely tried to avoid all of the rumors out there on social media and confirmations from folks that had already seen the movie about what happened with Tony and with the final moments, and was very surprised by how the one path of the million that Doctor Strange had mentioned, one future where it all was successful, how it really ended up. But I was really thankful. I know we talked about this in our last podcast with the theme of sacrifice being really a touching one. But I find that my own emotions and heartstrings are tugged best by moments like that, where heroes that we've come to really know and love well are sacrificed. It's not just a secondary character that we'll forget about quickly.
Right.
It's someone that we know very well, and in some sense of the word we'll miss moving forward as the as the franchise moves on. Even despite the rumors that perhaps there's a way for Tony to transfer his consciousness through AI.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion and talk about that, especially with you heard about too with Black Widow. They're saying how she there was a rumor that I heard that came out a couple days ago, an article saying with the Black Widow movie coming out, and she has her sister, and they were trying to say that somehow her sister somehow changed her face, and actually the version of Black Widow that we saw in Avengers Endgame was actually her sister. So actually Natasha's actually still alive. It's a heck of a theory, but I don't know if I'm buying.
Yeah. I wonder. It'd be hard to go back to that whole dynamic between her and Hawkeye, where she was so passionate about preventing him from sacrificing himself. If it was a character with which he hadn't really developed that friendship. I felt like we saw the depth of friendship in their whole tussle, kind of the going back and forth about who was going to sacrifice themselves and who wasn't. So that's interesting, though. I mean, there was kind of a similar interaction actually at the end of X-Men 3 with Professor X having a sibling that he was able to transfer his consciousness in right before he got obliterated. So I could see that happening. There's been some other moments similar to that in Marvel history. But yeah, I felt like that was great. I'm trying to think. I wasn't bothered like some by the whole time travel inconsistencies. Every jump that they made and interactions they had with other characters in the past, I really enjoyed. I particularly enjoyed the interaction between Tony and his father, Howard.
Very much so. Yeah, it was good stuff.
That was probably the second most touching moment in the film for me was that scene. Just getting for Tony to have that opportunity ultimately before he died to really have some of the challenges that he had experienced in his relationship with his father really addressed and some reconciliation of a sort found there.
Very much so. I agree, because it was one of those things too where with the things with his father at the end, it really made his storyline come full circle. That time he had died at the end, and it was really, really touching, especially since from the time Iron Man 1 came out to the end of this. I mean, his relationship with his father was always kind of a building point for his character, and for it to kind of come full circle was kind of nice.
Yeah. I think the only thing that was a little bit weird about the film for me was just everything with Thor. Fat Thor was
Fat Thor, hilarious.
It was definitely the entertainment value was there. It was humorous, but it was just such a far fall for Thor. I mean, I rewatched the first movie of his after I'd watched Endgame, and certainly he had some pride issues, and but the Thor at the end of the first movie had just in almost an unrealistically short period of time really come to fruition character-wise, it almost seemed a bit unrealistic for him. I recognize that he went through some really challenging things. I mean, he made a huge mistake by seeking revenge instead of something much more self-centered than really putting an end to Thanos for the sake of everybody else's lives. Right. And I'm sure that would have been challenging for anyone to deal with, and definitely formative character-wise in a negative way. with the guilt that he was probably feeling about it. But it just seemed like it was almost rather than for the sake of character development, it almost seemed like it was partially for the entertainment value, kind of the humor piece.
Yeah,
and having someone to kind of play that role. I don't know. I just there was a part of me that was saddened that Thor became that particular role for the viewers. I think that maybe they could have used the folks from Guardians of the Galaxy, or
more humorous of the bunch.
Yeah, or you relied on some folks that have been a bit more historically the comedic relief.
Yeah.
To provide that element. But what do you think about Fat Thor?
To me, I mean, the only reason why, in a way, like I agree with you fully that the way Fat Thor is interpreted, how much he lost, it seemed like a little bit too far of a fall for him, considering how serious his character was, especially like in the first two Thors.
Yeah.
I mean, we know Ragnarok, the third Thor film, it was more humorous than the first two. They really lightened things up, and I guess it fit within the tone of Thor 3. But I mean, for as humorous as Thor Ragnarok was, the ending actually is pretty morbid. It really is, because he loses his home world. There's not much of the of his people left, and then in the beginning of Infinity War, he loses another half of his people because Thanos knocks out half of them. It was a pretty far fall for him. I mean, I thought it was funny, but I mean, I always thought that in Endgame, that was the one piece that I thought was maybe a little too humorous for the kind of movie that it was supposed to be.
Sure. Yeah. I think the other thing that had me thinking, more of the mystery of it was I'm very curious to see what happens with Loki and him having recovered that briefcase, or
the Tesseract and disappearing.
Yeah. I just I was like, wow, that changes everything.
It does. I know the upcoming Disney Plus series Loki is really going to go into him and stuff like that. So I'll be curious to see if somehow he gets his way back into our current timeline, or is he just going to stay in the alternate timeline? That'll be interesting to see how they're going to pull that off.
Yeah. So where do you feel like how do you feel like they can really continue the momentum that Endgame had with the Marvel movies? I think there's a lot of folks that are curious to see how you maintain the level of interest that Endgame Infinity War garnered from Marvel fans. They did well with Spider-Man. From what I can tell, Spider-Man did very well. But it's one thing to kind of continue to invest that much into one film after a climax, but to continue keeping the entire series at that level, could be tough.
Yeah, Spider-Man was also on my list for this year too. It's good that you mentioned that. But yeah, you're right though, because now that this is over, we look at the future of the Marvel franchise, and the only big ones we really have left, of course, Captain Marvel's now part of it, and Black Panther, and we still have Spider-Man. But yeah, when you look at the whole, Captain America's gone, Iron Man's gone. We don't know where Hulk's going to be. We know we're getting another Thor movie, which I'm very, very happy about, because at least he's staying around. We have another Guardians, but other than that, we got a lot of different movies like Shang-Chi and the Eternals that we really are not really well-known Marvel comics. And even though Marvel fans will know about these, how is the general public going to perceive them? Are they going to take them as much as we took to Captain America and Iron Man, or is it going to be falling on deaf ears? We don't know yet. I mean, I don't see another Avengers film really coming out for quite a long time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where Marvel's going to do things and if it's going to hold up. I think, to be honest, their Disney Plus's series might do better for them, because we're getting the WandaVision one, and we're getting the Loki series, and then the series about Winter Soldier and Bucky and the new Cap. I forget his name. Sure. Captain America is. Hawkeye, not Hawkeye, but the Flying Man.
The Falcon. Yep.
Falcon. Yeah.
So
it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how he plays the role too. I think that was a great choice.
Yeah, it was really interesting. But yeah, so another film I want to make mention too of, because I think this film really kind of describes what's going on right now, is 5 Feet Apart.
Okay, I'm not familiar. What's can you give me a synopsis, Mike? Sure.
Well, 5 Feet Apart. This is a movie that really is. This movie I think will genuinely make you cry. I don't usually cry when I watch movies, but this one I actually did. And
well, that's a recommendation.
Yeah, it's a strong recommendation. I think you'll really enjoy it. But so basically, it's about these group of kids that have cystic fibrosis, and they're all in the hospital. And of course, the biggest thing is they have to stay 6 feet apart from each other because it can be bad for their immune systems if they interact with other cystic fibrosis people. And any infection that they get, cross infection in their system, can kill them. So as the movie goes along, two people meet. Of course, you know, a guy and a girl meet. They kind of meet by accident. They're both in the hospital. They're both separate from each other, and they kind of collide into each other. And they learn to start hanging out with each other, and they start to fall in love with each other. And as the time goes on, you know, things get difficult. I don't want to give away too much of the movie to you because you haven't seen it yet. But it really tugs at your heartstrings because you see what these people go through, and you know, when these two fall for each other and they can't be within 6 feet of each other, it's heartbreaking because I mean we're kind of with that right now. What the CDC tells us now to stay 6 feet apart from people outside, and right now we're kind of getting a taste of that, and now we're kind of getting a feel of what they feel. And I think watching this film now, you know,
take on additional layer of meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah. Huh. Oh, that sounds like a great film, Mike. Yeah, I'm looking at looks like it was definitely, again, another one that was rated highly on IMDb and has some really good things to say actually on Google reviews. Yeah. Yeah, here's one actually. Cut out the audio. 1 second, I'm just trying to find. I saw a little snippet of it. Okay. Sorry, Mike. These reviews are really short. I'm trying to find one that's a little bit longer. Yeah, I want to watch this. I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah, definitely. I say definitely get out the tissues because you'll need them. So.
Okay. So this person, here's a review on IMDb by someone who actually took quite a bit of time to give their own verdict, but they kind of gave a general summary that this latest movie fills the formula of sad drama meeting the romantic teenage plot lines. Unfortunately, the acting is there to bring a fantastic dynamic to latch onto in the form of Cole Sprouse and Harley Lou Richardson.
Haley Lou Richardson. Oh yeah, she's fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, they said their chemistry is amazing, bringing the two sides of the romantic cone to life in a very sweet, charming, and surprisingly realistic way. That 5 Feet Apart took those characters and really did a fantastic job advancing them past the carbon copy templates that most of these types of films do. They also thought the supporting cast did a wonderful job of being integrated with the story with their own tales and dynamics meshing well to bring out the main characters in some new ways beyond what they even share with each other. And that the movie somehow managed to add on to the simple romantic story by appreciating these other dynamics that can be included in some romance movies. So it sounds like there's a comedic aspect that they felt was simple and classy, fitting very, very well with the tone of the movie without being too forced, which I always appreciate. I think that when there's serious themes coming through, sometimes overt comedy can almost detract from that. So I'm glad to hear that it was tastefully inserted.
Good balance.
And they mentioned that for those that enjoy symbology in the visual arts, that the rooms and works of the proverbial Romeo and Juliet have plenty of artistic bite that's impressive to behold. Instigate. So 1 second, I'm going to call that. They mentioned that the romance component itself, that they really gave them props for finding a way to bring love and beauty into a realistic way. That was both poetic and really fun to behold. They felt like it took the cheesy factor out of the romance and really made it an adventure that's fun for all of us to go on with them. So it sounds like the ordeal of the disease really contending with the blossoming love is the driving force of the film, and really managed to stay fresh despite how plotted love tales can sometimes be in other films like this.
True.
And with all those components, they felt like they worked really, really well. So
it did, like I said, the performances by both of them are just superb, and they really make this movie big time, because I mean the movie could be made or broke on the performances, and if they don't sell it, you don't feel their connection, and then you don't feel upset at the end. The movie's goal at the end probably is to make you cry, and it succeeds based upon how well they play it.
Yeah. Huh.
But yeah, all in all, yeah, I highly recommend it. I think you'll really enjoy it. I'd love to hear what your thoughts on it once you watch it.
Yeah, thanks for the recommendation, Mike.
No problem.
I'm excited to watch it.
I wanted to switch gears. Just we did some favorite ones. I'll switch gears to some disappointments or worst of 2019, because everybody loves those. I want to start with a big one, because this movie genuinely was disappointing, because I was expecting a lot out of it, especially I was waiting a long time for it, and I think a lot of people were disappointed by it. But that was X-Men Dark Phoenix.
Yep. Yeah, actually, that was one that I got to see as well. There were parts of it that I very, very few, but there was a couple parts of it that I enjoyed, but the vast majority of it I felt like was slow, ponderous. I kept expecting the plot to thicken, and
it never did.
It never did.
It's disappointing too, because this is the second time they have tried their hand at the Dark Phoenix storyline, because they did it in X-Men 3 when Jean Grey was older, and a lot of people were upset by that because we felt rushed and everything like that. And I thought by them doing this film, especially with this younger X-Men cast, they were developing Jean Grey properly, especially since they developed her really well, I thought, in X-Men Apocalypse.
Yeah.
They were heavily hinting at it. And for this movie to have been what it was, it left me just shaking my head like, you have the source material. How could you really screw this up twice?
Yeah, I was actually, while I was watching it, I watched it after Captain Marvel, and I had heard that the two plot lines were similar enough that they actually redacted and changed some of the material of Captain Marvel to avoid being too similar to Dark Phoenix. So when I heard that, what I was expecting as I was watching the film and just seeing it get off to what I was seeing as a dry start, I was kind of expecting what happened to me with Captain Marvel, which when about the first half an hour of Captain Marvel was pretty dry for me. It seemed a little bit predictable, and then all of a sudden when we had that flip of, oh my gosh, these guys aren't the bad guys, and the good guys are the bad guys, that it really took the film off for me. And I was really waiting for something similar to happen in Dark Phoenix, that there would be a huge twist somewhere,
right?
And that would make the whole film for me. But it never came. It never came. It stayed predictable, and villains were I felt like weak. I was kind of hoping for. I'm trying to remember the name of the devil on the shoulder figure. What was her name?
Oh, the one with the grayish blonde hair?
Yeah.
Or you're talking about in Dark Phoenix, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I forget her name.
The actress is Jessica Chastain. She also played in
Hunger Games. And Interstellar, yep.
Oh, yeah, Mystique is Jennifer Lawrence, and that was the surprising thing in that movie. That was the biggest surprise, was Mystique getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
That was surprising.
Sure.
But, I mean, which to me, there's problems with that, too. This is another problem with the X-Men films, is the continuity. The continuity in these films is all over the place, because, if you look at the end of X-Men 3 and what happened, and then Days of Future Past, which was the sequel to First Class, supposedly fixed that timeline so Jean Grey was alive again, and everybody was alive again.
And same with Professor X.
Right, and then And then the confusing thing here is then now Mystique dies, right? We know Mystique didn't die originally because in X-Men 1 and X-Men 2 she was around. So there's confusion there on how that all pieces together. I guess Mystique is now dead in the Ultimate Timeline. But also too, like Jean Grey at the end of this film, she kind of dies in a way. I mean, she becomes Dark Phoenix in the sky, and they hint at the end that she's still alive as a figure. So if Jean Grey is alive at the end of Days of Future Past, then I guess she makes a return from the skies, I guess, to come back to her true form when she's older again.
Huh. That's a great point.
It's a lot of continuity problems.
Yeah. Huh. Oh, it sounds like they need yet another reboot.
I think that's coming. Now with Marvel bought and Fox, there's a big hints that X-Men is indeed coming to the Marvel Universe. And I heard a rumor, too, that they're trying to get Hugh Jackman to return as Wolverine.
Oh, really?
Really trying, because I think they know.
It'd be tough. Logan was so good.
I know.
That was just such a great
finishing to a chapter. And, the thing of it is, I think they're scared because they don't see anybody else being able to play Wolverine as good as him. And I think they're really scared that they're going to screw it up just based on who plays Wolverine.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Mike, what do you feel like has kind of led to the consistent decline of quality of the X-Men films? Because I actually just went through with my wife Erin, and we watched the original 3, and I was just thinking as we were watching, I'm like, these used to be pretty good. And Logan was kind of an anomaly in that Logan was fantastic. And maybe because they had the liberty with the higher rating than usual to kind of introduce some more serious and mature themes. But I'm just curious to get your thoughts on what has kind of taken it downhill. Where are those decisions coming from?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because part of the reason why they've also said that Dark Phoenix suffered is because when they were making Dark Phoenix, they knew that the Marvel buyout of Fox was coming, and there was a growing pressure to put everything in one movie to finish the overall X-Men storyline the way Fox did it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why the movie's writing was all over the place, because they were trying to do too much. Mm-hmm. I think Dark Phoenix actually would have been served as being like a 2-part movie, being 2 movies.
Okay, sure.
Like an Avengers kind of thing, I think they could have maybe grown on her development more of becoming it, and then made her grow to it, where instead of just kind of throwing everything into one movie and just building off a little bit of what happened in Apocalypse. Mm-hmm. But it is kind of funny because after X-Men 3: The Last Stand, the X-Men franchise looked like it was over, because a lot of people did not like The Last Stand. They thought the movie was kind of a mess, and the fact that how it tried to wrap everything up and what they did with the Cure storylines and such, which is why we got X-Men First Class, which was kind of a semi-reboot, but it was more of a prequel. Mm-hmm. And that movie was fantastic. Days of Future Past was fantastic. We kind of started seeing a little bit of the decline with Apocalypse. Yeah. Apocalypse was still fairly good, but we saw a little bit of a decline from its quality from Days of Future Past. And then, we got Logan, which was fantastic. And now Dark Phoenix, which was back to the same kind of quality as X-Men 3, going out on a very low note. And now we have that movie coming out that just got delayed because of this epidemic, is the New Mutants. But from what we're hearing, that's not really in a general sense connected to that thing. It's kind of its own thing. So I don't know if you want to consider that part of it. That's kind of Fox's last X-Men-ish movie before Marvel does their own thing. Yeah.
How could you see the tone of the X-Men films changing once Marvel starts to get their hand?
That's interesting, because I guess it depends on how they're going to introduce them. Are they going to give them their own movie out of the gate and introduce them, or are they going to throw them into another movie and start kind of building them in the background and then give them their own movie? To me, I think it would be a mistake to do it that way. If they really want to launch X-Men properly, they got to give them their own movie like they've done everything else, because we can't learn about Professor X and the mutant community in the background of another film. We can't do it.
Sure.
So the tone, I think that they're probably going to add more humor than the other movies, because that's just how Marvel works.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting. I think you're going to see more humor, not quite as dark, but I'm intrigued with you as well as how Marvel's going to approach this going forward.
Yeah. Do you think there's a continued place for Sophie Turner in X-Men moving forward?
I really kind of hope so, because I really do like this young cast. I think they're fantastic, and I'd like to see them continue them. even if they somewhat reboot them, go ahead, but keep the actors intact. I would like to see it continue because I thought her Jean Grey was especially good. And she really was probably the best spot of Dark Phoenix. Her performance didn't bring it down. She played the role fantastic.
Sure. Yeah,
but,
more of an issue with the story. Sure.
Right. It's kind of sad when your lead character that the movie's about is doing a fantastic job, but the story around her is falling apart around her. It's bad. The building's crumbling around the actor. Yeah, not so good there.
Yeah. Huh.
Another big disappointment from last year. I don't know if you've seen this one or not, but was Men in Black International.
I actually, I thought about going to see it, and I forget what kind of held me back. Maybe I had heard something along the way about it not doing too well, but yeah, what happened, Mike?
Well, the box office was not strong. The movie did not perform as well as they hoped, even though Sony does want to continue the Men in Black franchise somehow. There's talk about getting Will Smith back for another movie. Maybe still keeping this cast intact, but bringing Will Smith back to kind of give it its box office fuel. The movie was, I don't want to say it was terrible because it was not. I wouldn't put it on my worst of lists. It's just a disappointment because Chris Hemsworth, who plays Thor, and Tessa Thompson, who plays in the movie, she plays Valkyrie in Thor Ragnarok and stuff.
Yeah.
The reason why they made this movie and put them together is because their chemistry was so good in Thor Ragnarok.
Right.
And I don't want to say that their chemistry in this movie is what hurts it, because it doesn't. Again, it's one of those things where you have two good actors and a story that's just mediocre around them. They're just kind of, they're not phoning it in at all. It's just that the story itself is just very generic. There's nothing special about it. It goes from beginning to end and just kind of slugs its way from the beginning to the finish line.
Yeah. That's too bad. What were they fighting? What was the basic plot of the movie?
Well, the start of the movie is basically Chris Hemsworth, and actually Liam Neeson's in this movie, surprisingly.
Oh, really? Wow, they got some heavy hitters.
He plays their boss.
Jeez.
Yeah. But him and Chris Hemsworth are partners at the beginning, and they go to the top of the Eiffel Tower. And we find out at the top of the Eiffel Tower, there's like this device, like this portal that leads to another world, like another dimension. And the aliens trying to cross over into our world. And then they really don't show what happens. They make it seem like in the plot that everything's kind of going well. They took it down and everything is safe. But we start finding out that there might be a mole inside Men in Black, and it just kind of drags on with finding out who the mole is and where the stories are connecting. You want to know how it ends?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. But basically at the end, Liam Neeson ends up being the villain. So in the beginning of the movie, when they flash the screen white, not showing how it finished, and we're told that Chris Hemsworth got knocked down, and Liam Neeson says he took out the enemy. We didn't see it happen. Turns out the enemy did get through. It took over Liam Neeson's body.
Oh,
it basically killed the real version of him, became the alien version of him, and he brainwashed Chris Hemsworth's character into thinking that they did take them down, and he still continues to think that until his memory starts getting put together by his partner, Tessa Thompson. It's just, it becomes overly predictable. By the time you get close to the end of the movie, you start figuring it out that Liam Neeson's got to be the bad guy. He's too big of an actor to be in a movie like this, to be playing just a side boss character. It's got to be something for him to do.
Sure. And it sounds like that transition happened pretty quickly. I did want to kind of get your thoughts. One critic had said that even for an action movie about aliens, that the film was just too heartless, that there wasn't really an opportunity for the characters to really experience emotion around emotional events.
True.
Is that your assessment?
Yeah, that's about right. Because at the beginning, we get Tessa Thompson's character. We see as a little girl that her parents were being talked to by Men in Black because there was an alien in the vicinity, and they got flashed with the neuralizer, and she was up in her bedroom and she hid. And she still remembers from a kid when the Men in Black came to her house. So she made it her mission to find the Men in Black, to become a Men in Black. So at the beginning of the movie, you kind of think, oh, they're going to do some proper character development here, get us involved in a new character like they did with Will Smith in the first movie.
Sure.
But after that, that's about it. Chris Hemsworth's character basically has no plot development other than the fact that he's living a memory in his head of killing an enemy that was planted in his head. That's basically all his plot really is for his story development for a character. So, yeah, in a way, it's very heartless.
Jeez. Well, the one other critique that I noticed for this film was that be particularly interested, given your background, Mike, with this, with effects. But they felt like for a film that had been riding on the success of the early iterations that actually were pretty successful around CGI effects. They felt like this one, for being the furthest advanced, was actually pretty poor with the effects compared to earlier films. Is that, I know you have a bit more of an eye for that than I do. Is that your thoughts too, or did you notice anything?
Yeah, the Men in Black films have always been kind of known to have cheesy effects in them. So in a way, I don't know if it was done on purpose to follow the tone of the other films because of its campiness. But I mean, yeah, the effects here, the alien creatures just look generic. There's nothing really overly special about the special effects for a movie that's relying on them. I think probably the only sequence that I can remember that was fairly good was when they're on the jet ski like flying vehicle where they're flying around on it. Those scenes were okay, but everything else is just kind of like
Justice League villain.
Oh, Steppenwolf. Oh yeah. Now that would be a podcast and a half. Justice League. That would be. Yeah, there's another director's cut we can talk about that's not being released, much like Rise of Skywalker. The rumored Zack Snyder cut that everybody wants to see because supposedly it's 10 times better than what we actually got.
Oh, really? Jeez.
But whatever. Probably another director's cut will probably never see Rise of Skywalker. So, but yeah, all in all, pretty much. I'll just kind of run down a little bit of like some of my other disappointments. Ad Astra with Brad Pitt was kind of a disappointment to me. The trailer made it look like there was a big twist at the end, especially since they were advertising, stay till the very end, you'll be shocked. I wasn't shocked. I was not shocked. I was waiting for the peak moment to say, okay, where's the big thing that's supposed to blow my mind? It never comes.
Well, they were speaking to the middle school and lower audience that would have been shocked.
Sure. I guess they just wanted to see, they want people just to stay till the end because most of the movie is kind of a goose fest. But whatever, I guess it's supposed to be a payoff.
Was that intentional misleading, you think, or are they just kind of overestimated its own value?
Hollywood has a knack of over publicizing films that probably don't deserve it, and I think this might be a case of a movie they thought they had to do to get butts in the seats.
Sure. Okay. Huh.
So I'd recommend if you're looking for a movie to put you to sleep, that's a pretty good one to do it. But also was disappointed by the newest Rambo movie. Was very excited for that. I didn't get a chance to see it in the theater, but I saw it on video right after it came out. It was basically a run-of-the-mill action film. It was really short. Nothing really special. Gemini Man with Will Smith ended up being kind of disappointing as well, especially for a Will Smith movie. Just story was just kind of okay. Nothing really special about it.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to see the cartoon Addams Family that was out?
I didn't. No.
See, that's another thing. I'm a huge Addams Family fan because when I was a kid, I used to love the live action movies. And when I saw they were making another movie, I was kind of hoping for another live action. Of course, this time we got a cartoon, which was fine. Cartoon, actually, I remember being in the theater and about the hour mark, I actually zonked out for about a good 5-10 minutes. So if that tells you.
Wow, I've never seen you fall asleep in a movie, Mike.
No, this movie just was not doing anything for me. I saw it in the store the other day. It was, or about a month ago, I saw it in the store when they were selling it pretty cheap, and I walked past it and like, no, I don't need anything to put me to sleep again. I walked away from it. I'm sad by it because they actually greenlit a sequel to it now, and I don't really know why. I don't really know why, but disappointing. And then finally on my disappointments list of the year would probably have to be Secret Life of Pets 2.
Really?
I mean, I liked the first one. I thought the first one was pretty funny, and I thought it was something fresh and new. I mean, 2 wasn't bad, don't get me wrong. It just maybe the idea of wore out already. Maybe just the fresh idea of 1 already wore itself thin. I don't know. Did you see that one?
No, I didn't. No, actually, the film I wanted to get your thoughts on, Mike. I was actually drawn to it after watching the Grammys. I'm sorry, not the Grammys, the Emmys.
Okay.
And it was the 1 second, Mike. Am I saying the right awards? They're from movies. Is it the Grammys?
The Oscars. The Oscars.
Oh, the Oscar.
That's okay. Hey, to be fair, music gets nominated for Emmys, and music's a big part of TV and movies, so that's fair. It's fair. It's fair.
So the film that I was actually drawn to after seeing the Oscars that it received was Parasite. I had never heard of the film until the Oscars, and that might have been my fault, just in my distance from most things media these days, not having as much time to keep up. But in any case, it was one of I think the first foreign film to receive Best Motion Picture of the Year. So I'm like, I gotta see this film, and I saw it, and I'll say there were certainly some moments in the film that I was surprised, and I was really impressed by the acting. I thought the acting was phenomenal, but I came away wondering what necessarily set it apart from all the other films of the year, and I couldn't figure it out. I mean, not that I'd seen every other film, but I'd seen a number of other films this year that I enjoyed, that were surprising. I just wasn't sure if you had gotten a chance to see this one and had any thoughts on what kind of put it up so high.
You know, that
fantastic too.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I actually have not seen Parasite yet. And what's interesting about that is that, you know, I didn't know much about Parasite until it was nominated for the Oscars, because I had heard about this foreign film that was getting a lot of recognition and this and that, but I didn't know much about it. I knew it was I believe a South Korean movie, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. It's essentially the themes it centers around is greed and class discrimination. There's these two families, one that's very poor and one that's very extremely wealthy, and the very poor family slowly but surely manages to employ their entire family under the wealthy family, and the two families almost form this symbiotic relationship between themselves, where the poor family is definitely benefiting from full employment for a wealthy family. The wealthy family is kind of perceiving themselves as receiving all these benefits from the services that are being provided by the poor family, even though they don't really realize that all of these employees are in fact related. And that's about as much as I'll say, because I don't want to ruin the plot for you. It's a very intriguing plot. Like I said, I was definitely surprised at times, and I enjoyed that I was surprised by some of the twists. But I just wanted to kind of see if you felt like it was justified being the best motion picture of the year. So whenever you get a chance to watch it, I'd be grateful for your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. Based upon like what got nominated for Best Picture, I sadly have only seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 films, 10 films nominated for Best Picture. I actually have only seen 2 of them, actually. And so for me, the only ones I've seen that were nominated for Best Picture was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Joker. I did not get a chance to see 1917 yet. I know now it's out on digital, so I'll just watch 1917 now. Marriage Story was the other one, which is on Netflix with Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver from Star Wars. Little Women, Jojo Rabbit, which is that movie that's kind of about those kids during the Nazi times.
Yeah.
And then The Irishman, which is on Netflix as well. So Ford vs. Ferrari is the other one as well I have not seen. One with Christian Bale and Matt Damon. So you know, for me it wouldn't be fair for me to compare it to anything other than what I've seen. I mean, have you seen Joker yet?
I have, yeah. I was actually going to ask your thoughts about it, because I would say I enjoyed Joker not out of the delight in the violence of the film, but I was so impressed by Joaquin Phoenix's acting. He immersed himself in the character in a different way than I feel like Heath did.
2 different kinds of Jokers.
But definitely in to a degree that I felt like Heath did, where it was utterly convincing. And I've always felt that way about Joaquin. I haven't seen all of his films, but I've seen several. The first one I actually saw of him was Gladiator, where he played the Emperor's son, and I remember being very impressed with his performance there. But gosh, was he convincing in Joker? And I found myself smiling at points, again, not because of the delight in the content, because there were some pretty dark moments, but more so out of such an appreciation for his ability to portray a character.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
agreed. And what was kind of nice too is that there was huge differences between the way Heath Ledger played it and him. So to me, they're playing Joker, a same character, but they're playing a different kind of Joker.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. The themes in the film were really dark. But yeah, I mean, as a whole, I mean, if I compare like, Joker and then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is the movie that takes place in the time of when Charles Manson was and stuff like that. But Quentin Tarantino does a good job of it. I mean, he provides a little bit of humor in there. And there's a twist ending to the true story of what actually happened that makes the film worth seeing all by itself.
Really? Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, like you said, I haven't seen Parasite yet, and I can only compare it to what I've seen Best Picture wise. But I'm sure, knowing the Oscar committee, that there probably was
a lot of thought.
a lot of thought into it. I mean, I know in past years I haven't always agreed with what has won, but to be fair, also too, in past years I haven't necessarily seen everything that's been in that category, even seen one Best Picture, so I'm not a fair one to judge it. But yeah, I'll have to give Parasite a watch because I'm really intrigued to see what led them to it winning Best Picture. It's intriguing, especially for a film that's a foreign film that won for the first time. That's very interesting.
Yep.
So, but yeah, so let's see other movies that are my favorites from this year, to name a few. John Wick 3. Alita: Battle Angel. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I haven't. I know you'd recommended that one to me, and I read a brief synopsis of the plot, and it sounded like definitely the type of film I'd enjoy. What drew you to it?
That's a good question, because I thought the trailer was pretty well done. It piqued my interest. I think just basically the trailer just seemed like it was an interesting take on a character. I think Alita was correct me if I'm wrong, for any listeners or viewers or whatnot, but I think it's based off a graphic novel. Okay. I'm pretty sure. I don't know much about the source material, so I don't know how faithful it was, but I know a lot of people really liked it. And the movie didn't fare nearly as well at the box office like they wanted to. But now that Disney has bought Fox, people have been going on Twitter and starting this campaign to make an Alita sequel. So now there may be new fuel to make a sequel, because the movie definitely has a very much open-ended ending. Very much so. There needs to be a sequel. Very much so. There's a lot of story there. But I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, John Wick 3. That was at the end of a trilogy.
When I went to go see it, I thought it would be. But actually, it's not. There's actually more to come, because the movie ends with a cliffhanger, which John Wick 4 is coming out next year. So
I've heard the series has been fantastic. That's definitely been on my list for a while to kind of check in with that.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves is. But before the series came out, Keanu Reeves' favorite of mine was, of course, The Matrix. That's what he's most known for. He played a fantastic part there. But John Wick, man, I mean. That's right up there with The Matrix. I mean, and it's funny now they're making The Matrix 4, which I'm going to be very interested to see how they're going to explain how Neo's alive.
Sure.
I mean, maybe The Matrix brings him back to life somehow. I don't know. They said that the story is interesting. Keanu Reeves said the script was very compelling. We'll see.
Sure.
But yeah, John Wick 3, if definitely up there with one of his best with The Matrix. So
cool.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So we talked about Spider-Man, we talked about Joker, and of course we talked about Star Wars with our last podcast. Still waiting on the director's cut for that, so I'm hoping that is indeed coming. I think though too, since the Blu-ray's coming out next week, there are no deleted scenes on it. Now we know that Disney is full of it there, because we know there's deleted material. There's been for every Star Wars movie ever made.
Yeah.
So the only reason why I think they don't put them on here is because they are saving them for an ultimate cut. They've got to be saving them for that. Got to be.
Jeez. Wow.
So that'll be interesting.
I'm excited for it. I still have to watch the, I know you mentioned it came out on DVD, and I haven't gotten a chance to watch it again yet, but I'm really excited to. Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching, because I bought it on digital last week, and I got a chance to watch the 2-hour the Skywalker's Legacy documentary, which is, I recommend if you want to know like how the series was developed from beginning to end and how they did this movie and everything. It's definitely worth the watch.
Huh.
It's very intriguing. There's a lot of good interviews with the cast, and they show some like archive footage from Empire when they filmed Empire and A New Hope and stuff. It's pretty good.
Huh. Neat.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's exciting.
But go ahead.
I was going to say that the one film, just as we're kind of talking about things that we're excited about, and I don't believe that the first one was a 2019 film. I think it was 2018. But the film I'm most excited about coming up in 2020 is actually A Quiet Place 2.
Yeah, I'm bummed because it was supposed to come out, as you know, on the 20th of March.
Yep.
And it actually was going to be my birthday movie.
Oh.
But now all this happened with the epidemic, and now the movie's delayed indefinitely.
Yeah. As we've talked about films that deserve an entire podcast to themselves, I think to fully discuss John Krasinski's the impact of his work on A Quiet Place would probably take that long and more. I think because he wrote it, he directed it, he acted in it.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that he did?
I think that was his feature debut for directing. I don't know if he wrote anything before that, but you're right though. For a movie that's only an hour and 30 minutes, you could talk about that movie for 2 or 3 hours in a podcast because it's a movie unlike anything we had seen before. I mean, I think the first half hour there isn't basically the first 25 minutes. There's no lines of dialogue. It's completely silent.
Right.
And a lot of times, if somebody told you that, you'd say, "I'm not watching that." I mean, come on, what that, But it works, and he makes it work because not don't get me wrong, the cinematography is beautiful. It helps. But the fact that we're getting a chance to kind of experience the world they're living in for the first half hour makes the rest of the movie that much scarier.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I'm really
keep trying to convince my wife. I think if they referred to it as of the genre thriller, I might have a shot. But they keep calling it a horror film.
I mean, I guess it's a horror film in the sense of it having the jump scares. And I've heard the second one. I've heard the second one is actually scarier than the first one. So I mean, that might be a hard sell. I'm looking for that. That's a good subject to pretty much to kind of close on with everything. Is with this epidemic going on. Look at all the films that were coming out that have been delayed and put off. A lot of productions have been delayed. Films release dates have been pushed off. I mean, I know like Quiet Place was one of them. The sequel to Wonder Woman has now been pushed from June to August.
Oh, really?
Fast and Furious, which was supposed to come out in May, has now been pushed back to April of next year.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that, that's I'm curious, Mike. With that being said, for those that might rely a bit more on the theaters to kind of provide them with new content, can you recommend any old films that people could watch online? I'm thinking 40s, 50s, 60s.
Ooh. Well, I can always recommend Citizen Kane. That's considered to be still one of the best films of all time. So that's always a heavy recommendation. Matter of fact, I think it's going to air this weekend on Turner Classic Movies. So
nice.
Watch for anybody that hasn't seen it yet. 40s and 50s. I mean, again, I guess you could always go back to any John Wayne movies worth watching. Mm-hmm. Trying to think who else. Katharine Hepburn movies.
Did The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly fall in that era?
Clint Eastwood. I mean, I think that's from the 60s or 70s. I think it's 60s. Okay. That's like one of Clint Eastwood's like first films. I think Clint Eastwood too, worth the watch too. I mean,
sure.
Even anything he's made recently that he's directed, acted in, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, anything with the old retro actors, is worth watching because the oldies are always different to watch than what we have today. Mm-hmm. There's something special. So yeah, anything with those I recommend. But to say too, some of the films that were actually in theaters have actually been moved up and are actually available on digital now for what's going on.
Oh, really?
Wow. Vin Diesel's Bloodshot that came out 2 weeks ago was only out 4 days before the theaters basically got closed down. So now it's available on digital on Tuesday. You can buy it now. Harley Quinn Birds of Prey can now be purchased on digital as well. The third Bad Boys movie is going to be out on Tuesday to buy on digital. The new Trolls movie that was supposed to come out next month is now going to be available on digital instead of coming to theaters.
Jeez.
There's a lot of them that are coming down the pipeline, and there's more to come, I'm sure. But it's sad because now we're not getting to experience some of these movies in the theater. And the new James Bond movie, which was supposed to come out in April,
is now another Bond. Gosh, what number is that? 30-some?
I think it's 25.
Jeez. Wow, that would be quite the marathon to watch through all the Bond films.
Oh, that would be that's about like a 20-part podcast at least. We talk about maybe one or two in one podcast, but yeah, that would be an interesting marathon to do. I'm actually marathon wise on Tuesday. I have the 4K Blu-ray box set of the Skywalker saga coming.
Nice.
So I'll probably watch all 9 in a row for the first time ever. I'm gonna watch all nine straight through. So that'll be interesting for a marathon. But yeah, all in all, this sucks. This sucks.
Yeah, especially for those of you with the Regal card.
Thankfully, they have suspended payment on that till they open back up. I'm still not paying on that, thankfully. But is there any other movies that you saw from 2019 that you've that I haven't seen or?
No, I honestly, those are. I think those are all the ones that I saw. It's funny because now when my wife and I go to watch movies, I'll tend to jump back a decade and pick top movies of 2008, 2007, just to kind of see old films that we missed along the way that are goodies. So, but at some point, I'm sure I'll get a chance. Actually, if the pattern continues, 10 years from now, I'll start watching the top films of 2019.
There you go. There you go. A lot of the ones that I named might circle back and come back in. Well, that's a great thing about having Netflix and Hulu and Prime Video. I mean, you get to kind of go into those movies from 10 years ago, and they're there, and you discover some ones you didn't even know even were out there. I still discover a lot of them that I might have remembered being out 10 years ago, but I never saw, and then I'm rediscovering them now saying, why didn't I watch this 10 years ago?
Right. Yeah.
So, one of those things.
Yeah.
But
thanks for all those thoughts, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. And I know we talked about having Dan English on a podcast here soon. We probably can do it exactly like this. Do a 3-man Skype and find something to talk about. We can all talk about what we kind of want to discuss. I know you haven't said if Dan has seen The Mandalorian season 1 yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah,
that would be definitely worth a good podcast. If he has or not, but we'll converse and we'll figure out something to do it on, and we'll do it because
plenty of time right now.
That's true. Plenty of time right now. But so thank you everyone for listening to the podcast. I hope we provided you at least a little bit of an hour and a half of escapism from away from this, and provided you with a little bit of entertainment. And we'll be back soon with something new, hopefully the 3-man podcast, and we'll try to keep you entertained through this pandemic, and hopefully in a month or so we'll be back to living somewhat normal.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody for listening, and visit the website lcamoviereviews.com to read our written ones and our YouTube channel, along with subscribing to our podcast on Apple Podcasts. So I want to thank Alistair for being a part of it today, and look forward to him coming back on future podcasts and entertain the crap out of y'all.
Thanks again, Mike.
What's happening?
Floating.